Hello, gunfighters. Welcome back to Gunfighter Life, the podcast where we talk about gunfighting the right way, with God at the center, Judeo-Christian values, and real-world, first-hand experience. Today's episode is a Patreon request on bug guns, so stay tuned. Don't forget to like, subscribe, leave a review of the podcast. Check out goodshepherdtraining.com. If you want to skip the bio, skip around 3 minutes and 45 seconds from where it starts. First and foremost, I am a servant of God, preacher, a fisher of men. God is number one in my life, and everything that I do in this podcast is no different, and I don't apologize for that. A little bit about me in the background. I grew up, I guess what you would consider a heathen. Didn't grow up a Christian, but I grew up in the southeastern United States, what most would consider very poor. Hunting and fishing and shooting. Joined the Marine Corps at 17, did a couple of combat tours in Iraq. After my combat tours in Iraq, I was an urban warfare instructor for the United States Marine Corps under Mojave Viper. I also served in law enforcement for several years in LAPD. I worked patrol assignments and more specialized assignments, where by God's grace, He got me through some nasty places in this world of war zones and some of the nastiest streets in the country. Not because I am better, because God chose to have mercy on me and had a purpose for me, and I'm thankful for that. After my time in law enforcement, I was a private contractor for federal government, for a 3-letter government agency I won't specify, doing private contracting work. I'm very much involved in guns and gunfighting. I also served in the U.S. Army, both full-time and part-time National Guard. I should say my primary MOS is in both branches of the military or infantry, as of one sort or another. Specialized infantry in the Marine Corps and an MOS that no longer exists. I started competition shooting even before I joined the Marine Corps at 17. I won my first gold medal even before I joined the Marine Corps at 17. I've been blessed by God with the talents He's given me to win more shooting competitions than I can remember. I've won most of my competitions in rifle and pistol, but I've also competed in archery and shotgun and even muzzleloader, knife throwing, hatchet throwing. I've competed in all that. I've also been a professional big game hunter and guide. Like I said, I grew up hunting and fishing and shooting. I've done it to put meat on the table because I like to put food on the table with the talents God's given me. I don't apologize for that. I've done it as a professional hunter and guide. I've slain all manner of beast and guided for all manner of beast. Bear and wolf and elk and deer, mule deer, whitetail deer. I've slain ram and fallow deer and countless animals. And I don't apologize for that either. FBI certified, firearms instructor, NRA, and a bunch of other 3-letter government agency certifications. Blessed be the Lord my rock, who trains my hands for war and my fingers for battle. Psalm 144. I've been blessed to be the commander of a tactical team, an SRT, special response team, in a large metropolitan area, where our primary job was to stop active shooters. But again, first and foremost, I'm a servant of God, called by God to share the good news, preacher, a fisher of men. With that, we will roll into the day's topic. So let's talk about bug guns. No, we're not talking about guns to shoot flies, or cockroaches, or even that weird creature from the movie The Fly. Do you remember that from like the 80s? I saw that probably when I was way too young to see that creepy movie. No, bug guns, if you're not familiar, stands for backup guns. So what's the idea here? This can mean different things to different people. You heard the bio. I was a police officer for a while, LAPD. When I had a backup gun there, it was a J-frame 38 special revolver. I generally had a shotgun in the car and a full-size weapon on my belt. I was issued a Glock 22. I carried a few different things as a cop. but what you would call a full-size fighting handgun. My backup gun was a J-frame revolver. It was a backup gun. I had another gun on me that was my backup gun. When I was a private contractor, my primary gun was usually an M4, and my backup gun was a full-size Glock 17. So for me, then, that was my backup gun. When I was in the Marine Corps, a lot of times my backup gun was a Beretta 92, because my primary was an M16, or my primary weapon was a small shoulder-fire multi-purpose assault weapon, which is basically a fancy name for a pretty complex rocket launcher with different warheads and stuff on it. But anyway, the point of that is that a backup gun can mean different things to different people. I think the context that we most mean it in today, and the way that I believe the Patreon who requested this meant it, was in the concealed carry, mostly civilian context for people that carry a gun most of the time. He said backup guns and mouse guns. Now, the way that I think this was intended as a backup gun, a bug gun, is a gun smaller than you would normally carry. As in, for me, I generally conceal carry a full-size handgun. A full-size fighting handgun. I conceal that all the time. I wear what I normally would wear, and I throw a button-up shirt on that's not buttoned up, or a jacket, depending on the temperature. And that conceals a full-size, what I would consider a full-size combat or fighting handgun with a reload. I think for most people, a bug gun would be a smaller gun than that. Even if I consider that the most common handgun for concealed carry is a Glock 19 or something like it, what they would consider a compact handgun, a Glock 19. I would say a backup gun is something smaller than that, maybe much smaller than that. As I said, when I was a police officer, I carried a backup gun. I carried a Smith & Wesson J-frame 38 Special. Still have it. Hopefully one day I'll pass that down to the next generation. Carried that thing for years. It's all beat up, but it still works. But that was the number one thing when actually the first handgun I ever bought with my own money. I was issued a sidearm, obviously in the military, and issued a sidearm when I was a cop, issued my primary duty weapon. But we had to buy our own backup guns. I bought the Smith & Wesson J-frame. I believe it was by far the most common. And this was back in the day when the baby Glocks were the Glock 26s and Glock 27s, which I also have and really like. The 26, that is. I don't own a 27, nor have I ever. But I remember when I was a cop, this was right about the time we first started getting really common bug guns that were semi-autos. The first ones I remember seeing were the Smith & Wesson Bodyguard 380s. And then the Keltec P380, and likewise the Ruger LCP. And I think Ruger LCP kind of took the market by storm, whether it was because they were more affordable or whatever. But I really remember, I think over a decade ago, the M&P Bodyguard and the Ruger LCP kind of dominating that niche. They're small, they're flat, they're compact. A lot of cops wore them on their vests. A lot of cops wore them in an ankle holster. I usually carried my backup gun either in an ankle holster or in my pants pocket opposite the side of my actual carry gun, in a pocket holster. A lot of cops carried them maybe in a back pocket, or it wasn't unheard of to have them in an extra handcuff case on their belt, or strapped somewhere in their cummerbund on their bulletproof vest. Those thin, sleek semi-autos, pretty much in 380, were the kind of advent, I would think, of most, at least law enforcement backup guns that weren't J-frames. The J-frame's been around for a long time, I think since the 40s or 50s. And I believe the Colt version of that may have even been around longer. So where do they fit in today? Now, for the member of the well-armed militia, for somebody that's not a cop, for somebody that's not active duty military, for somebody that just wants to be a well-armed citizen, part of the well-regulated militia, to watch and be ready. Well, I can tell you where they fit in for me. As I said, my go-to carry that I have on me almost all the time is a full-size fighting handgun. whether that's an M17 or whether that's a P226 in either 9mm or 357 SIG. That's as big as I want to comfortably conceal carry day to day most of the time. But, when I'm doing wind sprints and a pair of silkies, kind of hard to strap on the SIG 226 and silkies. If you don't know what silkies are, you should do some research, and you're welcome for being introduced to that here. But when I'm doing wind sprints, I carry what I would consider a backup gun. It's not my primary carry gun. It's a gun that I carry when I'm not carrying my primary carry gun. Or if I'm going hiking in the wilderness, I'm primarily going hunting, I have a shotgun. Yeah, I don't need that big sidearm. And a lot of times I do take it. I'm out deer hunting, scouting, something like that. I have binos. I have a deer rifle. I have a bunch of other stuff on my kit. I will a lot of times carry that backup gun in my pocket for times when I may not want, that full power deer rifle, or for times when I want faster follow-up shots that deer rifle just may not provide, or for something that's up close and personal. I've got that rifle slung and I get attacked by something and it's right on top of me. Trying to get that rifle into action is maybe unfeasible, whereas getting to that backup gun might not be. It's not my primary, it's my backup. A lot of times for me, I'm at the gym. Perhaps in my gym bag, I want a smaller arm that I can have close to me. And perhaps in a gym bag that's within arm's reach. So that's where they fit in for me. Again, I think these are guns that are smaller than you would ideally carry. And this line can be different for different people, but I would consider the line for me being the difference between anything smaller than a Smith & Wesson Shield. And I remember when the Smith & Wesson Shields came out, it kind of changed the market because the Smith & Wesson Shield was small enough to be super concealable, but it was big enough to get a full grip on and to be a full fighting handgun for most situations. It was in a full power cartridge, a 9mm. Gave you more firepower than most people are going to need in most defensive gunfighting encounters. Notice I said most, but the vast majority of your problems are either solved or over within 10 rounds in most civilian gunfights. And I don't have anything against full-size capacity magazines. My M17 has a 21 round mag, but I'm saying most of the time that doesn't come into play. So I think the Smith & Wesson Shield really changed the market in that it's slim, it's small enough and easy enough that most people will carry it. It's got a full power cartridge and it has a high enough capacity, especially if you carry a spare mag, to handle pretty much anything that you need. I would consider anything smaller than the Smith & Wesson Shield. And the next generation would obviously be the Shield Plus and the SIG 365, which kind of took the market by storm. It is a subcompact gun, but it holds what I think 12 or maybe 15 plus 1 rounds of 9mm. It's considerably smaller than a Glock 19. When you pick it up, you're like, how does this thing fit so many rounds? So the 365, the 365 XL, it spawned a bunch of others. The Hellcat by Springfield. I'm sure there are others that I'm missing. But those have only been around a few years, but I would consider those like a primary carry gun. I don't know too many people that are carrying like a Glock 19 and then carrying a 365 as their backup. Maybe somebody does. I consider that like the line is in that's a carry gun, and then anything smaller than that would be a backup gun. And you may define that line differently, and that's fine. But that's where I'm going to draw it. So with that being said, what are some of my top picks for bug guns, for backup guns? What some would call a mouse gun, a small gun. Well, I have a few. Top picks for me would be the Kel-Tec P32. I know it's far less popular than the P380, but if you've ever shot a subcompact 380, to me they're far more unpleasant to shoot than say like a full-size 1911 45 ACP. And it's hard to get follow-up shots. And I don't say this to brag, but I'm a state pistol champion a few times over, and speed shooting, Steel Challenge, which is like drag racing with a pistol. So it's not that I can't control recoil, it's that to a point where you get far more recoil than is manageable, and I think those little small 380s get to that point. The Kel-Tec P32 is in 32 ACP, and that gun is one of the ones I had and I sold. I kind of wish that I had kept. But it's super small, super slim. Not only would it fit in a front pocket, it'll fit easily in the back pocket of most pants. And mine was ridiculously accurate. It would make headshots at 25 yards. And that 32 is less powerful than a 380, but it's far more controllable, and I would rather have a gun that I can get quick, accurate follow-up shots on target with than a gun that's I fire once and have to readjust my grip every time. That to me does not seem like a good option. My next pick is going to be the Ruger LCP, but not in the 380 like you're probably thinking. My next choice would be the Ruger LCP 2 and 22. They make that gun in a 22 LR. I think that would be a fine choice. One, because it's going to be nice and easy and affordable to practice with. And two, again, because I think it'll be far more controllable than that LCP and 380 is going to be. This is one of the big things I see over and over again that saddens me about the gun industry. Don't buy your gun based on what's on paper. Buy it based on what you do to that piece of paper, meaning the target. On paper, it might look like it's a super small gun and a super powerful round that holds X amount of rounds, but if you can't shoot the thing and hit the vital zone on a target repeatedly in a, let's say, 2 or 3 seconds, getting fast hits on target from whatever place you're going to carry it, kind of what's the point? Because generally, from what I understand, 80% of handgun wounds are not fatal, which means you're going to need multiple rounds generally if you're counting on having to stop that threat. Most gunfights, statistically I've heard, are over in less than 3 seconds. So you're going to have to get the gun from wherever you store it to in action and multiple hits on target in that amount of time. If your gun looks good on paper, but it can't do that, then what are you doing? Pick a gun that can do that. So I think that P380, to me, I'd go with the P32. That Ruger LCP that's most commonly in 380 because on paper it looks better. I'd rather have it in a 22 long rifle because be easier to get multiple hits on target. I'd rather get several hits on target with a 22 LR than maybe one and have to readjust my grip and reacquire my sights with a 380. The next pick is going to be a 380. It's going to be the Glock 40. Which one is it? It's the Glock 42. It's the baby Glock now. Way smaller than my Glock 26. It's my wife's carry gun. She wanted a gun that she could go running with. And I have shot that gun, and it's okay, it's decent. A lot of people would say the Glock 43, and I would say no, the Glock 43 to me, I bought one when it first came out because I had the Glock 26 for a while, and I'd immediately sold it. I couldn't controllably get fast multiple hits on target with it. So what am I doing with it? I would say the Glock 42 because it's a little bit bigger than the LCPs and things like that. I think you can, if you squeeze it hard enough, get multiple follow-up shots on target. That one does make the list. And then my top pick is still going to be the Smith & Wesson J-frame. Now my specific model, and they make a bunch of different models. I talked about the one that I had and I still have, but that's kind of my backup to my backup. Staves in my wife's glove box. But mine is the 360 PD. I've talked about this gun before. I really like it. I still make headshots with it at 25 yards. It's a 357 Magnum. And it weighs 11 ounces and some change. 11 ounces and some change is lighter than some of the other guns we talked about. It holds 5 rounds. I'll generally carry a speed strip. I looked up the Ruger LCP and it weighs 9.4 ounces. And the Smith & Wesson Bodyguard I looked up weighs 11.85 ounces. And that Smith & Wesson I was talking about, the 357 Magnum, weighs 11.7. To give you a rough idea, an iPhone 10 without a case or anything weighs 6.138 ounces from what I looked up. We're talking about a 357 Magnum. Now, if you've ever shot one of these, I will be honest, if you shoot it in 357 Magnum, it's kind of like getting hit in the hand with an aluminum baseball bat. But I don't generally carry it if it's for defense against people with 357 Magnum. I carry it with 38 Special. The 357 Magnum revolver will fire both. And I do that for the reasons I stated earlier, fast, repeatable follow-up shots. This is unorthodox, I'm not telling you to do this, but my last round is a 357 Magnum. Because at that point, the shot recovery time is moot because you have to reload anyway. So I'm not telling you to get this model. For most people, I don't think 357 Magnum and that smaller gun is a wise choice. But for me, when I was a professional hunter and guide, for things like that, for when I go hiking, and it's my backup for bear defense, mountain lions, things like that, yeah, the 357 Magnum is nice to have. With some solid copper 357 Magnum projectiles. Most of the time, like I said, I carry it with 38 specials. With 38 specials, it's ridiculously accurate and controllable. It weighs 11 ounces. I like that gun. That is my number one choice. But any of the 357 airweights or featherweights or any of the lightweight models, the standard models that are full steel are a little heavy for a backup gun. But those are still my number one choice. Maybe it's because it's the first handgun I bought with my own money. Maybe it's because I carried it for so many years. But I think revolvers have a lot of advantage. Talking about fights that go to the ground, if you're talking about contact shots, if you're talking about, a bear eating your face off, revolver has a lot of advantage. You can press it right into your target. They're hard steel. You can strike things with them. Unlike a lot of the small square semi-autos, they have rounded edges, so they tend to blend into clothing pretty well. Again, mine's light enough that I do wind sprints with it. So those would be my top picks for backup guns. But, let us know. Let the community know what's your choice for a backup gun. Leave a review of the podcast. Leave it in a comment. Or go to goodshepherdtraining.com. You can get a hold of me on there. Again, this whole episode was a Patreon suggestion. If you think this content is worth $1, or even if you don't and you think your opinion is worth $1, for as little as $1, you can become a patron and leave your opinion on there. Let everybody know, hey, these are my top backup guns. This is what I think a backup gun even is. Maybe you think my whole philosophy on backup guns is wrong. And that's fine. Iron sharpens iron. We're here to help each other. That's why I put out the podcasts. I try and come at this from real world firsthand experience, but that's my experience. Yours may differ, and that's okay. I would be remiss if I did not mention, in general, my backup gun is not a gun at all. My backup go-to thing is a weapon. When I'm carrying a full-size fighting handgun, my backup is not another gun. It's generally a knife in my opposite side pocket. Just like when I was a cop and I would carry a smaller gun in my left side pocket. Nowadays, I generally carry a decent fighting knife in my offside pocket. I'm right-handed. I carry my gun on my right side hip generally, and I'll carry a decent fighting implement knife in my left pocket. I have gravitated towards a fixed blade. I generally carry a decent sized fighting fixed blade on a clip in my left side pocket. That's pretty concealable, pretty easy to conceal, but all I have to do is grab and go. It's a grab and go weapon. I'm blessed to be able to do pretty quick reloads. But if something happens, generally my go-to backup, again, is that knife. If you're talking about super small guns like, the NEA mini revolvers, which are made spectacular and they're kind of like a fine watch the way that they're made. A fine piece of machinery, and I would even say a work of art. If you get into something that small, that hard to control and shoot, are you really better with that than you are with a decent fighting knife that's going to probably be better and more utilitarian and maybe a better fighting implement? And you got to question that for yourself. Talking about something really mouse gunnish like the NEA mini revolvers, which again are beautiful guns, or a Derringer. Is a Derringer and whatever caliber really better? A decent sized fighting knife if you're talking about something like that? I don't know. You got to answer that for yourself. But a lot of Derringers weigh as much or more than that Scandium frame 357 that I carry. But they are smaller, so you got to, what are you doing with it? What's your scenario? What's a backup gun to you? What's your philosophy of use for it? Yours might be completely different if you're, a professional hunter or trapper. I was that 357 Magnum came in handy a lot, that little J-frame. I'd get stuff caught in a snare or have to dispatch a deer at close range. But a lot of people for that would carry a, single action or double action 22 revolver. For them, that'd be their backup gun, and that would be great. That'd be a great choice. With that, I want to say thanks for listening to the end of this episode. As a thank you, I'll throw out, as we normally do here, the tactical tip of the day. We touched on it a little bit. Did a whole episode on gunfighter life about gunfighting. I think it was entitled Gunfighting Up Close, Not Personal. Don't just practice the things that you're good at, the things that most people practice. I've never been in a lot of fights, a lot of hand-to-hand fights. They often end up on the ground. Don't forget to practice. We talk about dry firing a lot. Don't forget to dry fire, on your back, on your stomach, laying on your right side, laying on your left side. That stuff's important. In the prone position, in the supine position, with your handgun, with your fighting handgun. Likewise, a lot of people practice reloads, and I practice reloads. And fast reloads. Perhaps practice, if that gun's out of battery, grabbing your knife on your weak side or grabbing your knife from wherever you have it at. Practice whatever knife techniques you know or want to be familiar with to make space and get that gun back into action. It's one thing to be fast at a reload. It's another thing to try and be fast at a reload when you're being wrestled and bear hugged and grabbed. So think about those kind of things when you're dry firing, when you're practicing. Don't just practice the things that you're good at. With that, men, the tactical verse of the day. Because it's God who gives us strength. And you can win 100 gunfights, but if you die and go to hell, what's the point? Today's tactical verse will come from Leviticus chapter 26. And 5 of you shall chase 100, and 100 of you shall put 10,000 to flight. You will chase your enemies, and they will fall by the sword before you. 5 of you shall chase 100, and 100 of you shall put 10,000 to flight, and your enemies will fall by the sword before you. With that, men, thanks for listening, and have a blessed day.